I mean, is there anything lower than this government is prepared to do? I mean, before the election, all we heard was Bill Shorten, the member for Maribyrnong, out there saying what a great advocate he was for the disability community. Well, that was complete and utter rubbish, just another broken promise, I guess, in the litany of broken promises that this government continues to deliver. But what a cruel blow to some of the most vulnerable in our community. And the thing is, though, that absolutely gets me is that those on this side of the chamber have always reached out, have always tried to work within the NDIS as a bipartisan issue because it is too important for it not to be. Yet those opposite, that is nowhere near their DNA. They cannot do anything in a bipartisan way for the benefit of Australians. Everything is about playing politics, and politics at the most base level. It is absolutely beyond comprehension. You know, we joke when we have Transmission Tuesday running for, I think we might be up to week 8, bringing back the inquiry into transmission lines that are going to destroy communities in rural and regional Australia. But the contempt with which these ministers that come into this Senate denying to produce these documents that the Senate itself has ordered, the contempt with which they treat this chamber, the contempt with which they treat people with a disability, well, shame on all of you. Just shame on you. It is absolutely disgusting. And the thing is, though, the people that are most concerned about sustainability, the people that are so anxious when they read these reports are the parents of children with a disability who need to know that this scheme will be there for their child when they can no longer care for them. But those opposite are prepared to do nothing, work with no one, not be upfront, not be honest with anyone, whether it's the opposition, whether it's with the Greens or whether it's with the Australian disability community. They refuse to be open and honest. And now we know they're refusing to be open and honest with their own Labor state governments. I mean, one would hope, having a Labor federal government and Labor state governments in every state on the mainland, that they could all get together with their ideological pot and stick in it what they think they can do to make this scheme sustainable. Because there have been suggestions made. Look, you know, I do think that there's too many kids going on the NDIS. I do think that there's too many. But that's because the states vacated the playing field when it came to community health, and kids that needed a little bit of speech or a little bit of OT, some that needed some behavioural supports and therapy, some that need aids in the classroom, have been completely abandoned by the states. And so when we talk about the NDIS, and I've heard Mr Shorten use the term the only lifeboat in the sea, he's not wrong. He's not wrong in many instances. But there's also been an attitudinal shift now, because I can tell you before the NDIS, parents put their hand in their own pocket. Now, I know there's a cost of living crisis and everyone's finding it tough, but, you know, there are parental responsibilities sometimes that, you know, if your kid needs a swimming lesson, you pay for it. You know, if your kid needs a couple of speech therapy sessions, it shouldn't always have to be at the expense of the taxpayer. You know, that sort of comes with being a parent sometimes. But there is a complete, and this was promised by those opposite when they introduced the NDIS. Don't worry, you'll never have to pay for any of this ever again. There's community health at a state level. Well, that's gone. And if it's not there, the NDIS will pick up the bill. Well, that's not what the NDIS is there for. And there are things that can be done. We know that there are subjective tests and objective tests, and we know how assessments are being made. Some people may be putting on the NDIS so that they can get access to it. But we can have a look at some tests that will actually define whether or not a child should be on the NDIS, and we can track their development if they're in an early childhood pathway to move them off the scheme. And if that is what the government's looking at doing, introducing a Vineland or introducing a Mullen scale test, I'd be there to support them. I think this would be a great thing. Take the data, see what the kids are doing, how they're developing over a period of time, what's working, what's not working. It'd be absolutely happy to help. I think it's a great idea. But we don't know if that's what you're doing, because instead of being upfront and honest, instead of coming in here and providing your thinkings behind the financial sustainability of how you're going to cap at 8%, how you're going to rip $74 billion out of the scheme, rather than being upfront and honest where that's going to come from, you're drip-feeding into different newspapers which diagnoses you want to see removed. You're drip-feeding which groups are going to be impacted and how it's going to work. You're drip-feeding what the states are going to have to pick up without talking to them, and creating more uncertainty and more anxiety for a cohort of people that should be the most protected by this place, because that is what we are here to do.